This meeting is called to order. We will begin with a moment of prayer or reflection. Thank you.
So first up, we have adoption of the agenda. I am aware of one item to add, which will be item 13.1, appointment of an acting city manager.
All right, so seeing no further additions, we will accept that as amended.
Next, we have adoption of the minutes from our February 7th meeting.
Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, the minutes are adopted.
Moving on now to presentations. Our presentation tonight is from Bike Medicine Hat. We have Carter Gramlich, who's a fire prevention officer, and Kezia Lesko-Goslin, who's the co-chair of Bike Medicine Hat. Background information is in item 9.1 of your packets. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, you have the floor.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Kezia. I co-chair the Bike Medicine Hat Board, and with me tonight is Carter, who is chair of the board. I want to start by thanking you for giving us the time to present at City Council. This is a really exciting evening for me. I joined Bike Medicine Hat around 1 year ago, and it's been so rewarding to watch the organization grow to what it is today and to be speaking with Medicine Hat's municipal government tonight. To start off with some background information, Bike Medicine Hat is a local nonprofit organization working to build cycling culture and advocating for cycling accessibility in Medicine Hat. We are officially over 230 members strong, but really this is just a fraction of the Hatters who love to bike. Medicine Hat boasts many amazing opportunities for recreational cycling. However, this is not always echoed in active transportation. Tonight, we will present a selection of policy recommendations, evidence to increase opportunities for safe cycling, and thus, when implemented in Medicine Hat, will improve the viability of active transportation in our community. So as an organization, Bike Medicine Hat aims to work and collaborate with the city to achieve goals set out in the MyMH Municipal Development Plan. We really commend the plan's focus on expanding Medicine Hat's active transportation network. The plan highlights very positive guiding policies like increasing access for all mobilities and making infrastructure improvements via traffic calming measures and separated multi-use trails along roadways. These goals will improve quality of life in Medicine Hat and increase overall accessibility to active transportation. Now, this topic, active transportation, is something that all people in Medicine Hat should care about because building opportunities for active transportation helps build a better city for everyone. Getting more people on bikes means improving the physical and mental health of our residents, which leads to building a healthier community overall. Active transportation is also accessible to many people who cannot afford other means of transportation, which helps bridge the socioeconomic gap in our society. Boosting active transportation also yields benefits to community vibrancy and economic development. It makes roadways safer for all, and it decreases local contributions to climate change by helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So even if you're not a cyclist, the co-benefits generated by improving the atmosphere surrounding active transportation will still make Medicine Hat a better place for you to live, work, and play in. Our community is so diverse, and the interventions we're going to be discussing tonight will help make our city a better place for everyone. Now, I'll pass it on to Carter to discuss our first recommendation.
Thank you. Recommendation number 1 is to adopt a Vision Zero policy. Vision Zero is a plan to eliminate all traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries, while increasing safety, health, and mobility for all. Vision Zero takes a targeted, evidence-based approach to road safety and has been implemented in cities around the world. The fundamental principles of Vision Zero are traffic deaths and severe injuries are preventable and unacceptable. Human life is our highest priority, and preserving human life takes priority over convenience. Human error is inevitable. Our transportation system should be designed to anticipate human error so that the consequence is not death or severe injury. Safe human behaviors, education, and enforcement are essential to a safe transportation system. People are inherently vulnerable, and speed is a fundamental predictor of crash survival. Our transportation system should be designed for speeds that minimize risk to human life. In 2020, Medicine Hat Police reported 181 injury collisions, 4 fatalities, 13 collisions involving pedestrians, and 4 collisions involving cyclists. While implementing a Vision Zero strategy would improve safety for everyone, the benefits would be particularly important for people outside of motor vehicles who are inherently at a higher risk of severe outcome in the event of a collision. We must also recognize that children, the elderly, people living with physical disabilities, and those who live below the poverty line are disproportionately impacted by traffic-related fatalities and severe injuries. There are currently 150 photo radar sites in our city where speeding has been shown to be a problem. Enforcement alone will never make these streets safer. Instead, we should be looking at the street itself and making appropriate physical changes that would signal drivers to slow down. Spray-painted curbs, pylons, and portable signs are some of the methods schools are using in an attempt to slow down vehicles and better identify crosswalks among rows of parked cars. This crosswalk has no parking signs placed on either side of it in an attempt to keep vehicles back and make pedestrians more visible. This past week, I observed 3 vehicles parked within this no parking zone. Education and enforcement won't prevent this. Fortunately, good infrastructure design can. Installing raised crosswalks with curb extensions would ensure cars aren't parked adjacent to the crossing, put pedestrians in a much more visible position, narrow the distance they need to cross, and require the approaching driver to slow down to cross the raised table. In January 2021, 2 women were hit by a driver while crossing Cameron Road in a marked crosswalk. Both were taken to hospital, with one of them suffering severe injuries. The driver was turning left off of Carey Drive onto Cameron Road and was ticketed for failing to yield. This is a fairly standard intersection and has wide crossing distances and no physical elements to protect pedestrians or slow turning vehicles. This intersection is also located a few hundred meters from an elementary school. Data from Alberta Transportation shows that over the 20-year period ending in 2018, this intersection saw the second highest number of collisions involving pedestrians and cyclists in our city, with 13 collisions. When collision investigations are solely focused on traffic safety violations, we aren't looking at the full picture or making the roads any safer. A comprehensive analysis should be performed after every serious collision to consider how the transportation system contributed to these crashes and what we can do to prevent them. A new multi-use trail was recently installed along Carey Drive. Consideration should be given to adding continuous sidewalks at crossings where local streets intersect Carey Drive or other collector roads. Continuous sidewalks prioritize pedestrian movement while keeping people in a more visible position, narrowing crossing distances, and requiring vehicles to travel much slower when crossing. The footpath would incorporate tactile strips to identify the crossing point for visually impaired users. In September 2021, a child was struck while crossing in the vicinity of 4000 13th Avenue on his bicycle in a marked crosswalk. Vehicles traveling south had stopped to allow a group of children to cross, but a driver approaching from the other direction did not stop. This child suffered severe injuries. 1 year earlier, another child had been struck while crossing the same crosswalk on his bicycle. Not surprisingly, there were many comments on social media about how this is a dangerous crossing that needs attention. This crossing is located along a multi-use trail and is also in close proximity to a school. Rapid flashing pedestrian beacons are an example of a treatment that could be applied at this location to ensure approaching drivers recognize when people are present. Another measure that can be used to signal to drivers that bicycles may be crossing is to incorporate green pavement markings alongside traditional crosswalk markings. Additional signage could also be added to alert people traveling on multi-use trails when they are approaching a roadway.
So the second recommendation we wish to promote tonight is the reduction of speed limits in residential neighborhoods. In Medicine Hat, we've already seen the establishment of safer streets in our downtown core via speed limit reduction, and it would be beneficial to have this measure implemented within our residential areas. Reduced speeds in residential neighborhoods not only improve safety, but also reduce traffic noise and will improve Hatters' perceptions of safety in their own neighborhoods. This figure details the magnitude of the association between speed limit and the probability of a fatal injury resulting from a collision. At 30 kilometers an hour, collisions only result in fatal injury about 10% of the time. At 50 kilometers an hour, this probability increases dramatically to about 85%. By reducing speed limits from 50 to 40 kilometers an hour, the likelihood of fatal injury resulting from a collision is reduced by over 50%. Students from the University of Alberta addressed a calculation that around reducing speed limits in residential neighborhoods, and they found it would only extend a person's commute from the suburbs to downtown by about 40 to 45 seconds. So this calculation is also based off Edmonton traffic. So if we extrapolate that to Medicine Hat, we can assume that disruptions to traffic would be even less. So this small change really does result in a great impact. This slide shows an educational tool that was released by the City of Calgary to accompany changes to their speed limit policy. Calgary's education campaign was coupled with policy implementation to improve the effectiveness of speed limit reductions. Calgary has also committed to designing new residential areas with 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limits. The City of Edmonton has also implemented a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit in residential areas, and the town of Banff has approved a reduction of their speed limit to 30 kilometers an hour. So if larger cities like Edmonton and Calgary have successfully implemented speed limit reductions, and if a high-traffic area like Banff has approved such a policy, a similar change would likely be just as effective and successful in Medicine Hat. The next policy recommendation we want to discuss has also been implemented in Calgary. As shown on this billboard, the City of Calgary has employed a safe passing distance bylaw to improve how motorists and cyclists share the road. This billboard is a very helpful educational tool because it provides a visual guide for motorists and cyclists as to what the safe passing distance looks like, and it also promotes the bylaw itself. Together, these two techniques will likely increase regulatory compliance via education rather than enforcement. If you've ever cycled on a roadway before, I'm certain you understand the fear of being passed by a vehicle of any size, especially when they are within a meter of you and your bike. Establishing a safe passing distance bylaw in Medicine Hat is an opportunity to increase road safety while decreasing potential liabilities for motorists as the likelihood of collisions decline. It's important to note that this bylaw is also a tool to increase active transportation accessibility as it establishes a friendlier atmosphere for cyclists on local roadways. With implementation of this bylaw, parents can feel comfortable letting their children bike to school, and people of all ages can have more confidence to bike in Medicine Hat.
Recommendation number 4 is to install a connected and safe cycling network. Recommendation number 5 is to update our transportation plan. The 2010 Cycling Master Plan proposed a base cycling network, shown here in purple, and while some new routes have been installed since this time, there remain significant gaps. The Dutch Crow Bike Design Manual talks about 5 design principles for bicycle infrastructure: cohesion, directness, safety, comfort, and attractiveness. Our current incomplete network is a significant barrier to making cycling a practical year-round form of transportation. Those who are traveling by bicycle are faced with decisions about traveling a direct route that is not as safe, or spending additional time taking detours to try and piece together routes that feel comfortable. Completion of this minimum network needs to be prioritized and not set aside as a long-term goal. Providing dedicated space for cycling is also better for motor vehicle drivers who can become frustrated or nervous when forced to share space on the road with a person on a bicycle. Our 2010 Cycling Master Plan and 2013 Roadway System Master Plan are both due for revision, and we support the creation of an integrated transportation plan that revisits the role and function of the transportation system and places a greater degree of emphasis on multimodal transportation. Intersection design is an important component of a transportation network that prioritizes people. Protected intersections and modern roundabouts incorporate measures that keep road users safe and reduce serious collisions by reducing vehicle speeds, narrowing crossing distances, improving visibility of people outside of vehicles, and managing turning movements. Bike facilities should be designed to accommodate all ages and abilities. Painted bike lanes are not suitable on higher volume roads or where speeds exceed 40 kilometers per hour. When we design safe bike infrastructure that is physically separated from motor vehicles, we not only protect those who are already cycling, but we open the door to a larger percentage of the population who will use it. These low-stress routes would also help to attract higher numbers of women and children, visible minorities, and seniors to use them. Changing the layout of existing roads may be an option where adding a trail is too costly or not possible. Wide, multi-lane roads encourage fast driving and could be redesigned to incorporate protected cycling infrastructure.
The next recommendation we'd like to point out tonight is the creation of an active transportation coordinator position within the City of Medicine Hat. Right now, various departments have stakes and responsibilities in active transportation and public safety. Establishing this position will help unify interdepartmental policy efforts, provide an improved focus on public engagement and education, improve management of infrastructure improvements, and enhance active transportation planning. Now, these are just examples of what this position could do, but really the possibilities of what this job could accomplish are endless. Having someone who works for the city, whose role is dedicated to activities like planning active transportation-related projects and seeking and building community partnerships will help achieve all the goals we've discussed so far in this presentation.
Changing existing roadways to meet Vision Zero goals will cost money. Some changes can be implemented quickly and cheaply using a tactical approach with flexible posts, planters, or portable concrete curbs. Other projects will have higher costs and longer timelines. We feel that the money generated through photo radar revenue should be directed into a reserve to pay for Vision Zero initiatives. The city keeps 40% of the revenue it generates through the use of photo radar. This equates to approximately $1 million per year and would go a long way to making our streets safer. This measure would also be clearly aligned with the Alberta government's recent rule changes and the general public perception that photo radar should be used for traffic safety and not for revenue generation. The federal government launched a national active transportation strategy last year and has dedicated $400 million over 5 years to assist municipalities with bike lanes and other active transportation projects. This program will pay for 60% of project costs. While we hope this type of grant funding will continue, we also want to see the city allocate a dedicated amount of money for active transportation projects each year. Having this stable funding in place is necessary to ensure that these projects get completed while also making it easier for staff to properly plan for them. As we work to create a vibrant, healthy, and livable community, we must take steps to prioritize people outside of cars. We feel that implementing these 6 recommendations will help us to correct the course and ensure safe and equitable mobility for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very excellent presentation, well delivered to both of you, so thank you. I'm going to open it up for questions if you're comfortable with that. Yep, okay. So, is there any questions? I think Councillor Knodel had one. Okay. Okay, Councillor Dumanowski.
Thank you, Risha. Excuse me, Kezia and Carter, thank you for coming this evening. We had the opportunity to hear you at our Energy and Infrastructure meeting a few weeks ago, and we thought it'd be prudent and appropriate that you enlighten all of the council and the community at large about your recommendations and your insight. And certainly, I said a lot of comments at the committee meeting. I won't try and repeat, but I will start by saying that it isn't incumbent upon groups like yourself who have a very focused, refined interest in our community in a very proactive way to bring these kinds of things to our attention. Having been here a number of terms, I do note that we have, and I think your presentation suggests the same, that we have made some strides. I would be remiss if I thought or embellished the fact that we did more than I think we ought to have accomplished in that time. I know it's easy for any politician, including a person who's been here, to say we should have done better, but I really think we could have. Resources are tight, and in some cases, timing is an issue. And I know when I spoke to you, I did indicate that in the past, all of those things seemed to be an issue, and there was never an appropriate timing of your predecessors who came forward with recommendations for improvements to transportation and bike lanes and the sort. With our budget process, which, you know, up till now was 4 years, and we will be underway in that process here shortly, and also our strat planning. And to me, part of that, if council wills it, fits into both of those. And if the alignment of those things and the convergence of those things aren't happening in the right alignment or timing, it just means a delay and a delay. Certainly, I know our staff, past and present, take safety, and it's paramount to them as it is to any council. Your presentation goes beyond that. I think it has the opportunity to meet both safety improvements, some practical improvements, and sight lines for traffic. One of the things that struck me in this second time seeing this and hearing you is when you were talking about dedicated bike lanes, because I know for people who don't use active transportation or bikes as a mode of active transportation, maybe recreational, they may say, well, why look at this as why create these kind of dedicated spaces or lanes at the expense, literally and figuratively, of traffic movement? But you made an important point that I caught, was that it actually improves the comfort and confidence of the driving public, who equally are challenged to try and navigate through these networks where there are people who are actively using the road. So that was an insight that I observed. So I'm making a couple comments, and I do have a question. I wholeheartedly endorse your being here, and I endorse the fact that you're bringing some practical recommendations. The timing is good if this council wills it. I certainly will it, and as one person, to see us move more proactively down this path. I know it's been some time since we've looked at the transportation plan. The mayor mentioned today in her address at lunch today that we have 150 some kilometers of pathways, and that's phenomenal. That's an achievement. But it's in one way moving the recreational movement of pedestrians on bikes and other means of transportation down and through the city safely, but it doesn't answer all of the questions that you put before us. I think having a vision of active transportation in the context of Vision Zero and all the suggestions that come out of that is going to be helpful. And I'm certainly going to be an advocate for it. So my question would be, because going back to another point, resources are limited, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is we can't do everything all the time. We can be very focused and intentional, and we can do that, and I'm committing to that. But what we need to do is maybe look at this and parcel it out and say, what can we do first or second? And I know many of them are done together or need to be done in concert with one another. But if there were one or two of the recommendations, I know that's a tough one, but you know where I'm going, that had to be prioritized, if you can even do that, because in some cases they're kind of a philosophy, and then you have some very specific examples. But what would be one or two of them, and no different than any other organization who has to prioritize what they want, even though they have a greater vision?
Before you do that, I'm just wondering if it would be helpful. I note that Director Bohan is on the line. If he had anything that he wanted to add about stuff that maybe because Councillor Dumanowski mentioned that some progress had been made. If there was anything specific that he wanted to add, if you don't mind. Acting City Manager Pancoast?
Yes, certainly. Please go ahead,
Okay.
Director Bohan.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Yes, we met very recently with Mr. Gramlich, and I'd like to thank Mr. Gramlich and Ms. Lesko-Goslin for coming in tonight to talk to the community about roads and road safety. As the road authority, city assets within the city, our primary objective is to ensure the safety of our residents and the users of our roadways and pathway systems. We design those systems and pivot based on a multitude of factors. And a number of points were made tonight that I think are worth addressing, especially when it comes to safety. We take feedback and recommendations from our police authorities anytime that they identify an incident or a collision or any other serious event. We also abide by and take recommendations from the traffic standards, bylaws, federal, provincial, and municipal regulations, and we also accept public feedback. So we're constantly listening to special interest groups, individuals, groups like Bike Medicine Hat, the EMA, the Downtown Business Association, and others. And we take that information and we gather that and create a balanced approach. And that balanced approach, we have to use science when we go through the process of evaluating the best approach to identifying the root causes of incidents or challenges and the best treatment for what might be an opportunity to do a better job with our roads and pathways. What we don't want to do is to accidentally solve one problem and create a series of other downstream issues that we didn't expect. With regard to residential speeds, I think it's really important to note for the group and for our residents that we will have the results from our collector arterial road safety and speed summary coming up very shortly. And the residential speed issue will be addressed in a more broad-based traffic safety plan we hope to present here in the very, very near future. That traffic safety plan will be funded by, in part, hopefully, the National Active Transportation Fund. It should be noted, I think, in order to assist both council and the community, that the scope of this review is expected to include multiple modes of transportation, which include pathways, roadways, and how people get around, everything from motor vehicles to trucks to mums pushing carriages and bikes. It'll be including all modes of pathways and road and transportation infrastructure in the city. One of the things I'd like to comment on and it specifically mentioned by Councillor Dumanowski a moment ago, we've put in place 12 new routes since 2010 when the cycle master plan was introduced, and very, very thankful to federal, provincial investment in infrastructure, as well as the kind contributions from organizations like the Rotary Club. One thing I can say in conclusion, and I think this may be helpful for everyone, is that we're excited to explore new traffic calming measures and increase pathway access in the coming months. We've got design plans currently underway to connect the Kincooley area through both up the hill toward Division, as well as connecting Kingsway into the pathway system, which will lead directly into downtown. So we're very excited to serve the city and our residents, and continue to do a good job and serve the city.
Thank you, Director Bohan. I don't know if that helps you narrow down what your top asks would be, but you may go ahead and answer.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Dumanowski, for your comments. We appreciate hearing that. Some of the items we put forward tonight are policy. So changing a Vision Zero strategy, creating the policy is the first step, and then making those physical changes. As Director Bohan suggested, the engineering department, they know how to make roads different and safer and more pedestrian friendly, but they need support to do that. As he suggested, there's people in the community who think that speed limits should be raised, who prioritize convenience and traffic flow, and we should do everything we can to avoid congestion. But those are the way that we used to think about traffics and roads, and the way that we think about it now is people first. What can we do that's going to make the roadway safest for people? And if somebody has to wait an extra short period of time, they have to wait an extra short period of time, and that's just the way that it has to go. So implementing strategies, not everybody rides a bike, not everybody walks to work, but we want people in the community to understand and appreciate the benefits and the reasoning behind those things. So implementing changes with a side piece of education so that the public understands and there's less pushback. But the photo radar, if we can direct that revenue to Director Bohan's department and give them that support and encouragement, I mean, that's going to be a win-win. So the photo radar revenue separation piece and adding that in, that's a policy thing, again, that we can do right away. The safe passing distance bylaw, there's not a real cost involved there. It's just a policy change. So those policy pieces, those things hopefully we can see addressed in the near future. As far as funding, hopefully there'll be room to create some dedicated funding so that over the next couple of years, those missing connections can continue to be finalized.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Canoto?
Through the chair, thank you, Mayor Clark. Hi, Carter and Kezia. I'm glad to see you here in real life. I was lucky to sit down with both Carter and Kezia on a virtual chat just a little while ago, and we had a great conversation about your values and how I'm aligned with the work that you're doing. And I want to say thank you to both of you. I think the work that you're doing is brilliant. I'm over the moon and proud of the particular details and the forward momentum that you're making. Like being here with us is a big deal. So excellent job. So I think that the one thing that I heard you say was, one thing that stood out to me was that human life takes priority over convenience, and you reiterated that just a moment ago. I have a friend I grew up with in high school who lost her mom to a bike collision just south of Medicine Hat, and the impact of that, I don't think you can't come back from something like that. So I personally would like to see zero bike deaths, zero pedestrian deaths, zero injuries in general in Medicine Hat. I think that would be a great direction to head and an essential direction to head. I would also like to see, just for the common person who maybe isn't in a bike community, and again, these are things that you talked about, I would really like to see the average person feel safe to get on their bike and go to wherever they're going, go down to the river, go wherever they plan on going with their friends or to work. We have a population we call a captive bus riding population that could benefit economically by active transportation policies and us supporting the work that you're doing. So I am an advocate for this, and I think that you know that already. But yeah, I'd like to, with support of the rest of council, create a policy of some sort or a statement that says we are in support of bikes and pedestrians in our community. I think that that would be very important. So overall, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Dyke?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again for coming. I really appreciated your presentation tonight, and obviously at Energy and Infrastructure. I'm not going to repeat all of the comments I made at that meeting because I think they were many, but just a couple things that I like to ride my bike, and I have used it as a primary form of transportation in the past, but in Medicine Hat, safety is an issue. Riding your bike near other vehicles, of course, can be very nerve-wracking. And while I love our recreational trails, I think they're fantastic, I would definitely like to see more accessibility to places that people need to go for running errands, so grocery shopping and banking and things like that. And so I think having an integrated system of cycle tracks and recreational trails, it would be really effective in the community. Thank you to Director Bowen to talk about the work that has been done since the 2010 plan was put into place. And I'm very thankful that his department is pursuing the integrated transportation funding as well. And yeah, so I guess I just also very much appreciate Bike Medicine Hat and for you guys coming here today. So thanks again.
Councillor Hyder?
Good evening, my friends. Great presentation. I'm so proud of this Bike Medicine Hat movement. I have dear friends sitting up there looking at me. I too once was a biker when I had more time. I fully support this. I love the idea, Carter, about the federal funding for 60%. That's a huge thing to visit in this day and age. So there is money out there that we could look towards. As far as the safety, I echo Councillor Knodel. We need to be in a community where we're safe, and we need to have people that use different modes of transportation to be safe. So thank you very much for coming, you guys.
Councillor Dumanowski?
Your Worship, thank you for indulging me. Just to Director Bohan, actually, at the same time, one of the slides that Carter and Kizia brought up indicated the number of collisions reported in a specified period of time in many of our intersections or streetways in Medicine Hat. I'm just curious, what do we, and I'm not putting one on the spot, and I'm going to preface that question. I know our city works hard to ensure safety. I'm not just saying that. I know they do. They've made some improvements, and I even at the committee level spoke to how a lot of the crosswalks now do have bulb outs and things. We in our newly established areas, we have a lot of these things, and they're going to be the mainstay, and we can always look to improve, and certainly the city has and does. So I want to say that. But Mr. Bohan, just can you just speak to, so those collisions that are, or those intersections that are identified as repeat problem areas, I mean, just on the surface, once or twice, maybe it could be related to human error, and obviously any collision technically is human error, but contributing factors, are there high-level evaluations that are done annually or at some cyclical level to look at these intersections and make improvements or suggestions? When I look at Cameron and Kerry that you identified in 13 collisions in a period of time, I don't know if that's statistically significant or not, but it sounds like it is. So just some high-level thoughts from you I'd appreciate.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Dumanowski, just to let you know that of the 8 sites that were identified, we've either made changes to those various sites or have plans to do so in the very near future. In fact, 2 of the projects we're looking at are going to take place this year. Just in terms of how we respond to repeat incidents at various intersections or on direct pathways. We rely on the Medicine Hat Police and RCMP to advise us of real problem areas that they've identified after they've done their investigation. Again, coming back to this idea of using a science-based approach. That said, I think it's safe to say that our teams are actively engaged in evaluating sites that we hear either from the community or are raised to us through various different associations. So we spend, I'd say we have 1 to 2 dedicated people full-time responding to traffic issues that arise from incidents and or from requests in the community where we do those analysis.
Councillor Robbins?
Yes, I'm through the chair. Thank you, Mr. Gramlich, Ms. Lesko-Gosselin for presenting to us today. I find it interesting when people come to present because I listen to them and I agree and I nod, and then sort of what happens next? I get stuck on that. What happens next? What do we do now? So I'm looking at specifically at your list of things you've asked us to do. And so I think the cycling network, the transportation plan, and the active transportation staff are all budget issues. And as we're drafting and talking about budget, they're definitely things that we'll keep in mind as things, thankfully, you've told us about and we've heard about, and we can move forward. That's a much bigger discussion than is here today. I think with respect to reduced speed, I do take it from Mr. Bohan about some information from police and certainly something for further discussion as well. When I look at the safe passing distance bylaw, that seems to me something that we can do and should do. It's not, is it difficult to pass a bylaw? A little bit. It's going to take someone to draft it, and it's going to take some time, and it's going to take direction from council. But I think that safe passing bylaw would be really informative and educational to the public to make active transportation a more viable option for people who may be fearful otherwise, to know that the city places a priority on their safe way enough to tell drivers of motor vehicles that you need to make way. And I think that's important. I've also done a little research into Vision Zero because it was mentioned to me before by Bike Medicine Hat. And if anyone hasn't looked up that initiative and what's happened in major cities and the amount of fatalities that have been reduced, it's really remarkable. And any family who's grieving a loss of someone because of a motor vehicle accident would be, I think, really inspired that you would come here today to encourage us to adopt that policy. So I'm not really sure like process-wise where those things go from here, but I certainly think that the Vision Zero policy is something we have to consider very quickly and thoroughly, and I think the safe passing bylaw is something we could also do quickly. The reduced speed may take a little bit more work and effort, but I see where the benefits are, and certainly that chart you showed us is really valuable to really demonstrate that difference. And I will say my day job, I've prosecuted many, many traffic fatalities that were caused by speed, more than anything else, frankly. So I understand how reduced speed could really save lives. I've seen that for myself. So anyway, I thank you for presenting. I love when people give me a list because I love to do things on a list. I'm a list person. This is a good one. And I'll certainly look at it in budget moving forward. Those last 3 and the other 3, I think, are something I want to work on quickly.
Thank you. I'm guessing that you could probably get your hands on some model bylaws and policies that would make the drafting process a little easier. Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, Mayor Clerk, through the chair. I just wanted to double up on what Councillor Robbins said. I would like to move forward with this if possible, and perhaps acting managing director Pankos could assist us if we have the support of our group.
I think what I would ask is that this gets referred back to Energy and Infrastructure for further consideration and follow-up. Councillor Robbins?
Thank you, and through the chair. I wondered, because I'm so interested in bylaws, if the safe passing bylaw could be referred back to the Administrative and Legislative Committee for discussion and review of other bylaws. I know that there's recreational trails sort of fits under public services, and then there's the roads. But I think a change in bylaw maybe goes to administrative and legislative committee to at least be able to do that review of other bylaws with the assistance of the city solicitor.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's pretty operational, but I could be persuaded either way. I think maybe let's refer it to energy and infrastructure right now, and then if the bylaw piece gets discussed further, then we can move it through admin and ledge. Councillor Sharps?
Yes, just through the chair, just a quick question when we're looking at that bylaw, or a comment rather, when we're looking at the bylaw. So if we're gonna put in where they have to be a meter, there's a lot of roads that will not meet that requirement. So how is the bylaw gonna affect that? And so if I'm driving down Southridge Drive past South Boundary, there isn't a meter on either side of me to put that bylaw in, where I would automatically, if a bike was there, I would automatically be in breach of that bylaw because the road isn't wide enough. So it's something we just can't put a bylaw on without looking at the roads and how they work. Because there's lots of roads in that Southridge area that just aren't wide enough. And Southridge Drive is one of them. When you get past, when you're closer to South Boundary Road, it's just not. So just something to be wary of, because I know I get familiarity with tickets. So I can just imagine I'm just going to be there and I'm going to be within 50 feet or, 5 feet. So just something to consider.
Councillor McGrogan?
Yes, thank you both for the presentation. It was excellent. I also had the opportunity to hear it before and appreciated it both times. I have to, I guess, agree with Councillor Sharp's, sorry, through the chair, that I think the bylaw could be a good solution, but I think there'd be a lot of rigor that went into it. So I don't think it's we can do this quick. I think it's something to consider and have lots of discussion about. Because, in my previous life, I always said that sometimes those types of bylaws are behavior in nature. And sometimes to put a law around behavior is difficult if you can't make a clear and defined rule that's very subjective. So I would really look forward to hearing, objective. So I'd be really willing to hear from our road safety experts, and look at other bylaws in other communities. And I do know that other communities are more, I'll call them bylaw happy, around behavior than what Medicine Hat and other communities have been. And perhaps the one that you've mentioned might be one of them in my view. So I just think there's, I do support a good, sturdy look at it, but I just wonder where it's going to take us, but would be happy to if that's the direction of this group.
Sturdy look. City Manager Pancoast.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair, thank you very much for the clarity of the recommendations. Given the clarity of those recommendations, may I suggest that we refer staff to provide a response back through energy and infrastructure as to how we may be able to respond fairly aggressively against some of those, given a number of the interdependencies of work that's already occurring, and also some of the other potential unintended consequences that has been raised with respect to the 1 meter bylaw.
Why, yes, you can suggest that, and I think it's a lovely suggestion. Thank you. Did you have anything else that you wanted to, any final remarks?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through the chair to Councillor Sharps, on your question about the practicality of the bylaw. So the 1 meter minimum safe passing distance bylaw, so you would be required to, when you're overtaking a cyclist, give them 1 meter. If the roadway, for whatever reason, isn't wide enough to be able to do that, and you can't safely pass the cyclist, you should not pass the cyclist within 1 meter. So when there's no cyclist present, you can take up the full lane, whatever, there's no issue. It's only when there's an actual cyclist there that you need to, or you want to pass, you must give them at least 1 meter. And so the City of Edmonton and the City of Calgary both have this bylaw, and of course we can look to them for wordings. In their bylaw, once the speed limit is higher, so on a faster road, the distance goes to 1.5 meters. And it's not an enforcement thing. We're not gonna have police out there writing tickets, but it's an education. You saw the billboard in Calgary. So the intent behind it is to specify for people who are driving in a big, solid, safe vehicle, and they don't know that it doesn't feel safe when you're whipping past a person on a bike because they don't bike. So it's more of an educational piece, and the message comes out that this is important. We have to keep these people safe. There's also a movement underway provincially, and realistically, this ideally would be a provincial traffic safety issue rather than a municipal issue. But unfortunately, the province of Alberta hasn't actioned it. Many provinces do have safe passing distance bylaws. In Alberta right now, it's up to the municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Sharps.
Just to respond, yes, I am aware of that. I just, I want to be very cautious about just running in to do this for all the right reasons, but maybe not with the right outcome. So if we're going to do this, let's do it properly so that we engage the community and they go, this is awesome, this is amazing, we took our time. And not that I'm saying we need a year to do this. Let's just make sure that we're not putting anybody in peril, because otherwise what we could have is unintentionally causing more maybe not some welcoming to the bike community. We want to make sure when this happens, this is positive and that it's welcoming and everybody's on board and drivers aren't feeling like, oh, great, a bike. We want them to understand this and why. So it's not just about your perspective, but it's the entire community's perspective. So a little bit of balance while we do this. So, and I love to see the bikes out there. Personally, never going to get on two wheels, ever, ever, ever. So, but do I think it's awesome that everybody else does? Yeah, but there is lots of us that don't bike, right? So I also want to make sure that people like me that are out there are well aware, this is the new rule, here's where we're going to do it, how does the bylaw affect us? I just don't want to be seen rushing into it because it's the right thing to do. Let's do the right thing because it's the right thing to do and we got there properly.
All right. Thank you very much for coming and presenting to us. And it sounds like our administration will be preparing a response and potentially looking at some of the lists that you provided. So thank you so much.
Your Worship, I'll move that report presentation for reception.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll vote. That's unanimous. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Moving on to reports now. Item 9.1 is the Energy and Infrastructure Committee meeting of February the 3rd. Just for information.
I move to accept.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, we will vote. And that's unanimous.
Next report's item 9.2, the Administrative Committee meeting of February 9th, with two reports for adoption. First report's Bylaw 4690 to amend the procedure bylaw. And the second one is a proposed road closure, more of a lane on Spencer Street.
I'll move those items for adoption as indicated.
I'll second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Dubanowski?
More out of interest to the public, when we see proposed road closures of segments of streets like this, I do note that in the past few years, the city has been quite more vigilant around closing pieces of roadways that may exist but otherwise are not functioning in the same capacity or in the intended capacity, or there was an overlay for it to function in that way, but it wasn't. So more or less housekeeping, I would imagine, maybe acting City Manager Pankos can speak to that, but I do note that public takes interest when they hear road closures. They sometimes are alarmed by that, but in many cases, they're quite benign in nature. Maybe just a quick comment.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Dumanowski. Yes, this one is benign. It's never been functional. It hasn't had functional use as a road. And this is on city property that we are looking at a possible consolidation after this occurs, if it is approved and passed through the bylaw stages, in order to consolidate and perhaps use as marketable property.
Councillor Canoto?
Through the chair, thank you, Mayor Clark. So to clarify, for those people that are curious, Spencer Street, and you can confirm acting managing director Pankos, that Spencer Street is kind of like the back alley to Kipling. Is that correct?
Not entirely correct. Hard to explain, but it is certainly within the package in terms of the location.
Okay. Yeah, it's just I wanted to put that out there as a clarifying question. So so there will be access to Arctic spas there on that end. So there'll be no closures that will affect business. That's my main concern.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, perfect.
All right, seeing no more questions or comments, we will vote. And that's unanimous.
Our next report is item 9.3, the Corporate Services Committee meeting of February 10th. And again, just for information.
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Van Dyke?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Clark. I just had a question, I think, for Managing Director Eggert about the 6 local Crown properties. I just wondered if you could be more specific about which 6 those are in the grants in place of taxes.
I will have to pull up the list, but it does include items such as the Remand Center and the Alberta Provincial Building. Those would be the 2 large ones of the 6. And if you give me a minute, I can look them up.
Yep. Acting City Manager Pankos, I'm wondering if you would also mind just giving, I think grants in place of taxes is a bit of a mystery to some people, if you wouldn't mind just giving a quick overview of what that means.
Sure, through the chair. While Managing Director Eggert is looking up 6 properties, I'll do my best and he can correct me if needed. But essentially, the provincial government is not taxable by a municipality. Therefore, we are required to provide a tax notice at normal course of time. And the government then provides a grant to us as if they're paying the tax, but it's in the form of a grant. So that's the grant in place of taxes.
And that was reduced this year, yeah, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Through the chair, there are 6 buildings. The Youth Group Home on Southridge Drive, Fish and Wildlife Facility on 25th Street, the Youth Assessment Center on Kyler Road. I mentioned the Remand Center. I mentioned the Provincial Building, and of course, the Courthouse on First Street.
Thank you. Councillor Robbins?
Yes, I just wanted to say, through the chair, that I attended the Corporate Services Committee meeting, hanging out like a regular person, just listening but not speaking, as you do when you're not on the committee. You hang out and you listen. And I just want to take the opportunity now to thank Ms. Schmaltz, who's the Manager in Customer Care and Billing. She provided a presentation on the life cycle of a tax customer that was, I don't find taxes all that interesting. Interesting is not the right word, but informative, certainly, and I appreciated the time that she took to present that. She did also say that there's FAQs on the city website for anyone who has questions about their taxes, any issues. They have lots of tax estimator tools, e-tax webpage, lots of information there. So having heard about that at committee, just hanging out, I thought I would certainly thank her for her efforts providing that information. And often the information we get that I think is useful to the citizens sort of sits in the committee and doesn't get highlighted. And so I thought, because tax notices are coming out and people may have questions about enforcement and that sort of thing, that there were some great resources there that I wanted to just point out to everybody as a listener at the Services Committee.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, we will vote on the motion. That's unanimous.
Item 9.4 is the Public Services Committee meeting of February 14th, again for information.
So moved.
I'll second.
Sorry.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote on the motion.
Your Worship,
That's unanimous.
sorry to interrupt, point of privilege, I guess. I wouldn't mind, since it's on here, and I was just reminding myself, reading something in the Medicine Hat News recently about new funding, federal funding, I believe, for being looked at for municipalities where transit revenues were not identified, and all transportation modes, I guess, in other municipalities wouldn't just be transit. But I know there was, if I recall, $750 million worth of shortfalls identified, and I believe it was Canada-wide. And I was curious if, A, we were aware of that. I'm assuming we are, but what opportunities we might have to capitalize on some of that, because surely we had reduced transit revenue. Now, in saying that, there were some caveats involved in applying for those grants, and I can't totally recall, but it had to do with a certain percentage. It had to go back in some form of improvements of sorts. So I guess just bringing that to the attention, because I saw that and I thought that was a great opportunity for us to capitalize on some of that revenue that perhaps was lost here too. I don't know if we have any preliminary thoughts, but thank you.
I would maybe suggest, your Chair of Corporate Services, would you like that to come back? We have a new grant writer in that department. Perhaps at Corporate Services, there could be an update on, do you have sufficient information to know what grant it might be?
I would like the opportunity to come back with a fulsome response back to the Corporate Service Committee if I could. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Robbins.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, we did have a transit overview, which doesn't necessarily exactly what you're talking about, but we did get lots of information about how COVID has affected our ridership considerably and how numbers have really plummeted. And so I'm hopeful as we continue to feel safer than we were before that we're going to see some of those numbers rise up again and have more people using the bus, which allows us to do more things with the transit system. It's been pretty limited, one, financially, which is to your point, Councillor Dumanowski, but also two, just because ridership is so down. I also indicated at the meeting, and I'm issuing a challenge to all of you sitting around the horseshoe to ride the bus at some point in 2022 and take a picture of yourself so we can see it. I issued a challenge to my children, as you know, they're pretty little, to figure out how we can get from our house to the library from our bus stop, and we're going to try that during our holiday this week. So hopefully you don't see me riding the bus around the city aimlessly. But if I do, I do. It's going to be up to the 8-year-olds, not up to me. But I just want to really encourage people to think, if you haven't been riding the bus, why you haven't, and just encourage people to sort of get back on the bus. It certainly is really helpful. And if I see you on the bus, I'll be sure to say hi.
Okay, back to the next item on the agenda is 9.5, and that's the Administrative Committee meeting of February 16th, 2022. And there are 5 items, and they're all for adoption.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I forgot to look at the list. I was just looking
No,
at you.
I'm having technical issues here as well, sorry. Yes, so in this meeting is the briefing note regarding the immediate relief for high utility bills. And as the Chair of Energy and Infrastructure, I have been on the hot seat for the last couple of months, hearing from residents in the city about their utility bills and their shock, I guess, at how high the bills are when they receive them. And so at our meeting almost 3 weeks ago, I believe it was, we requested from the administration that we could have a few actions come out of it. So one was an explanation around fees and rates and how they're set, because there was a lot of confusion from the community about where those fees come from, why they exist, how they're determined, that kind of information. And so that work has been done and is available on the website. The second was immediate relief, or what could we do to kind of alleviate this problem for residents right now. We had the polar vortex in December, which was, many days of extreme cold. It was really difficult for some people. And then finally, just a broader look at rate setting in the city, and that's a longer term decision-making process that obviously can't be dealt with very quickly. So that one is something that will come forward in the future. But I want to thank the administration for this briefing note and for the many options that they went through looking at to give us some choices here. So I guess I'm curious to know what other councillors feel about the options provided. The one thing I do want to keep in mind or remind councillors is that some of these, my energy conservation side very much likes the idea of tying some of the rebates and options to having energy efficiency checks done on your home, but recognizing that people who have the least ability to pay are probably renters, and that it's unlikely that their landlords would be willing to go through the process and the cost to do this for their tenants. And so that's just something I'd like to remind the other councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dyke. Councillor Dumanowski?
Well, Your Worship, I also want to endorse the hard work of staff. In the briefing note, identified as immediate relief for high utility rates. I recognize, as Councillor Van Dyke has mentioned, there's a lot of attention brought to this for a lot of reasons, and some of them explainable, some of them less explainable or confusing. And I know that staff are going to, and under the direction of council, review kind of longer term, medium longer term impacts or ways to improve our system and our billing, and whether it's the line items or how they're understood, to other recommendations, obviously, that are yet to be determined. But I am heartened to see an immediate relief opportunity brought before us. It does. I'm not entirely sure if it will be celebrated by everyone equally, but I think in many cases it recognizes folks who didn't have the opportunity or weren't aware that there were fixed rates that they could pursue that would have put them in a position of significant savings on the commodity side. This gives an opportunity to kind of go back in time, if you will. And I do, as Councillor Van Dyke said, I like the fact that there is an incentive for those who would like to kind of go beyond that and better understand long-term how they can make improvements. And one of the ways to do that, of course, is to do the home evaluation. So there's some opportunity for credit there. And then anyone who, as indicated here, was on a deferred payment plan can continue to spread that January bill over an extended period. And then just the general waiving of the late fee payment, which to me, these are all reasonable. They're fair. They're cumulatively, based on anticipated uptakes, is in the millions, if I read this correctly. So it's not insignificant. But it will put everyone in a level playing field as far as catch up if they had wanted to or want to do some of these things that many people, 33% I think at the time did do. And so I'm pleased with that. I think it's fair. I think it's reasonable, and I expect many people will want to do that. So I'm thankful for that. And then again, I look forward to the longer term review and suggestions.
Thank you, Councillor Dumanowski. Councillor Sharps?
Thank you. Through the chair, I just going to ask for clarity for purposes of transparency for the public on the review of Bylaw 4492, Council Code of Conduct. If you could just kind of speak to what the changes were. I mean, I think we all know, but it's really important that the public knows.
Sorry, I guess I have to ask you to do that. Please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair to Councillor Sharps. Yes, from a legal perspective, it had been reviewed and it was identified that legally it was sufficient. However, it was noted upon further review by the Administrative and Legislative Review Committee that there was some confusion around some of the wording. So there was clarity in terms of the intent, particularly to ensure that any councillor does not use their position to impact future employment by themselves and or family and friends. And otherwise, to clarify a particular piece of the bylaw that was now repealed under the Municipal Governance Act and simply replaced again from an intention perspective. So nothing substantive other than clarity changes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if I could add that the second sentence that got removed was superfluous because the first sentence of 11.4 prohibited using your position to obtain employment, and the Municipal Government Act disqualifies any councillor from being employed with the city. So it was, yeah, I think clarity more so. Councillor Knodel.
Through the chair, thank you, Mayor Clark. I just wanted to do a tip of the hat to the Energy and Infrastructure Committee as well as the staff that were working on this document here for immediate relief for utility bills. There was a couple that stood out to me. The opportunity to sign up for fixed rates for those people who haven't. I'm one of the humans that knew about it, of course, working in this chair and have had the opportunity. It hasn't saved me completely, but it's definitely saved me in a degree of a way. And then to have, I can again tip a hat to Alison Van Dyke, who's always thinking about those who are most vulnerable. Sorry, Councillor Van Dyke, and her thought process about our vulnerable portion of our community has made me think about them more often. And I think that waiving the March 2020 disconnect warning fee of $20 is a natural, it seems like at this time in the world to have an additional fee when you can't pay for something, it makes great sense. And I'm so glad that one was on there. It would be, I'm looking forward to these things helping people. That's my main concern. So thank you to the work that was done both on behalf of the committee and the staff.
Thank you. I will point out if you are at risk of being disconnected, that you really call our collections folks immediately. You can work out payment plans, and they work really hard to connect people with services that can help. And so it's on our website, and you can email them as well at collections@medicinehat.ca. Councillor Robbins?
Through the chair, I really, like everyone else, appreciate the work done to come up with some solutions on an immediate basis. I look forward to the long-term discussions on how we're going to manage this, because I think these conversations occur year after year. It's one of the reasons I hit the campaign trail, is these discussions continue to happen. If you have a municipality that owns, and I think people don't have enough information about this, and we need to get more out there. And that's certainly what you've been doing with all the emails you've received. And so I think a big part of it is giving people the information they need to understand really what's happening. But I can see when you have people say, well, if we own our own electric company, why is my bill so high? Why do I have no advantages being a citizen of Medicine Hat? And I think that these recommendations are helpful and they're very thoughtful. I don't think in my own mind that they go far enough to address this crisis that people are in. We are still coming out of COVID. People are still dealing with a lot of debt that they incurred when they lost their jobs. And a lot of people still don't have their jobs back. And so I would have preferred to see something to do with the community warmth. I know considerations were given to every possible. It's not like I don't think it was considered, and I get what the recommendations are, but I feel like sometimes we say, well, maybe the provincial government will do something about this, or the provincial government has a grant program, and these are our citizens. And so, again, I appreciate the work being done. I see all of the options available for people who are in real crisis and how they may be able to spread their bill out or add it to a tax bill, and those are all good options. For citizens contacting collections before you end up in that situation, they will be very helpful and kind and compassionate. That is their way, and they will continue to do that for you. But I just wanted these recommendations to go further for the most vulnerable of us at this time.
Councillor Dumanowski.
Your Worship, I wanted to speak to another item, but I'm going to make another comment maybe on the utility one. And I appreciate the thoughts. Doesn't really matter what Councillor Dumanowski thinks in relation to what others say, but I do. I think your comments, Councillor Robbins, would be echoed by everyone around the table. It's hard, and I know, having been on the last council, we did put significant dollars forward for COVID relief. We did it not once, we did it twice, and it would be strangely easy for us to do it a third time. The challenge will always be creating expectation, and that sounds bad. It sounds selfish almost, but around what the city can do and will do. I think what we've asked staff to do, and I think they brought forward here, is what can we do now? And then as we move forward, I mean, the algorithms that go into determining what a utility bill looks like in Medicine Hat, not just the commodity piece, but using the average of the four big utilities to other pieces, can be reviewed and ought to be in light of some of the variables that you spoke to, and certainly the public are aware of. We've been fortunate, and it's harder for us to ignore that when we've had years where we've made record revenues. And I've had people say, well, how can you reconcile that if you've done this and yet you're not able? How are you bringing it back to the ratepayer? And that we need to look at methodically. I'm proud that we are taking some time to do that very carefully, because what we do and what comes out of that will have long-term implications, and we may not be in the position in the future with record revenues, and maybe we'll have shortfalls. I've been on the council where we've had that, and it's frightening. And we're trying to identify for ourselves how we're going to keep moving forward, because the ratepayer and the taxpayer, the ones who own that utility, are one and the same. And so I recognize that, and I'm not saying that because the history you have or I have is different. I think it's shared. We're all citizens of this community, and we care about this community. But I do believe, in the very immediate sense, we've done what we can, and we do recognize there are people who are in emergency situations who can continue to seek out the likes of community warmth and others to deal with that. So not to take away from what you said, just to add to it. If I could, just on the sales of the 13 residential properties, because one of the things, Appendix C, that the public will see, and certainly it's important that we point it out because it's when we least expect it, it's pointed out to us, and that is that we're selling residential lots, and it does identify at a 22% discount. If I were general public, I might say, well, how generous of you to sell our land at a 22% discount. And it is important to identify a couple of things, and certainly I'm not the author of this, but I know it's something that has been echoed in this room in the past, and when we've made any kind of discount, but you have to look at the property been sitting for sale since about 2006, and listing price is not necessarily congruent with market value, a willing buyer and seller evaluation, and those evaluations we found ourselves in the last year or so to be offside of what their true value is, and that in and of itself is not necessarily congruent with what we're seeing on the national news scene when we see pricing of housing going out of this, beyond people's means. It maybe even comes across as counterintuitive that we're now making these kinds of discounts. You have to look at every community unto itself. You have to look at Greenland, bare land development versus an established home, newer, older, improved, et cetera. So each of those things are their own beast. But in this case, the 22% discount is an actual discount based on the list price, not the market price. And so we would not be too far offside, but we want to be transparent. And that was something, well, first of all, we have to be, but we want to be very transparent in our proceedings. And so if other developers or other, land competitor holders see this, they need to be able to see what we're doing here in a real and meaningful way. So I just wanted to highlight that it does identifies a 22% discount, and certainly it is from the list price, but it's not necessarily in recognition of what the market value is at the present day. And we're just happy that we have the opportunity for a developer to take them up, and we will realize some new tax base. And that's the other flip side to this, is if someone develops it and has a plan to do something that we can't do ourselves, or we have been able to do in the form of residential lots, that is going to be an increased tax base, which in the end will contribute to the pot in perpetuity. So just thought I would take a moment to explain that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dumanowski. I appreciate that. And like you said, the list price is from 2006, so it's quite stale dated. And my understanding from Managing Director Van Enck and Director Parrott, that we are going to be taking a look at reviewing all of these items to make sure that our list prices are actually up to date. But thank you for pointing that out. Councillor Sharps.
Just a quick, in terms of the immediate relief for high utility, I just wanted to share with everyone something that happened, because as we thank staff, there's a lot of course I do thank you, but there was actually an incident 2 weeks ago, I believe, where I was tagged in a post on a Medicine Hat roast and whatever it is, and ratepayer had tagged, one of my peers had tagged me in a post, and I immediately, she was just a desperate single mom going through an incredibly tough time and just reaching out for some help. And I immediately screenshotted it and sent it to Mayor Clark, and I said, what can I do to help her? And Mayor Clark expedited that. For the rest of council that doesn't know this, sent it up to Managing Director Egert, and I'm going to tell you, it was minutes, and she was getting a response. The staff were on it the next day. The person that had made the post had reached out to me immediately the next morning in tears, thanking me, thanking the city. She goes, I didn't expect that. And she wasn't complaining. She just didn't know what to do. Well, maybe a little complaining, but I would too. So, you get that place where you just don't know what else to do. And she was incredibly grateful, so happy to everyone, Dennis and his team. And so I made sure I reached out, because we all say thank you, but when you get some real life instances, it's important to know that you really did make a difference. So I'm very grateful.
Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Clark. I just wanted to highlight a sentence from the briefing note about the immediate relief. I wouldn't presume that everyone has read this from in the agenda packet, but it's on the first page and it says about the ongoing, that this should not be construed by the public as ongoing relief in an environment of decarbonization where utility bills could continue to fluctuate, as the city must still maintain the financial health and well-being of both the utility business and the municipality. And so I just wanted to kind of draw the public's attention to that too, because I think that there is, we have to look at it in two ways. So there is an advantage to a low utility rate. There's also an advantage to your community from the profits that come from owning our own utilities. You are an owner who sees the benefit from them in the community. But what I really wanted to highlight was that we would not be sitting here having this ability to have this discussion about looking philosophically at how we are going to determine how we set rates and all those sorts of things if we were not the owners, the public owners of our utilities. So I think it's really great to remember that we have these options because of this long history and this legacy we have in the city of owning our own utilities. Thank you.
Councillor Robbins.
I just want to sort of clarify my last comment a bit. Listening to Councillor Dominowski, it would be easy as a new councillor to say, let's throw money at this and make people happy. And that would be a very popular decision, but it would be short-term popularity because in January 2023, we're going to be having the same discussion. So I feel assured that Councillor Van Dyke, as the chair of Energy and Infrastructure and the rest of the committee, working with her, she says there'll be a fulsome review of the rates and the fees, which have been an ongoing issue, and the structure of those. And so I'll put my faith in you and support these recommendations. And I look forward to hearing what the new rates, fees, structure might look like. And I'll still be here January 2023. So maybe saying something different then, but I have every faith that I will not.
Seeing no further questions, let us vote. That's unanimous.
Our next report is a report for reception. Item 10.1 is the Police Commission meeting of January 27th.
I move to accept.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Councillor McGrogan.
I swore I'd never do this, so my credibility is probably further damaged. I just want to point out, I'm sure I'm not the only one on council that has heard the rumor of police hiring recruits. And I just want to point to the chief's report on, I think it was January 27th, where they related that they were hiring replacements. I think it's important that people realize that the police service, through my conversation with the chief and other admin, just in a casual way, not an official way, are just replacing the members who have retired over the last couple of years, actually. So it's not an addition of police officers to the strength. And I've read negative comments and heard them directly. So I just want to make that clarification. It's on, it's in his report. I think it's the last item on his report. Thank you.
Councillor Canoto.
Through the chair, thanks, Mayor Clark. So every time the Police Commission report comes up, I feel a sense of gratitude, and I just want to make a general statement. I work at a high school in Medicine Hat, and we have a SRO, so a student resource officer there all the time, and that's my common everyday interaction with our police forces through the SRO. But seeing the work that's done in the community, the amount of risk that is associated with this work, I just feel grateful, and I know that no no workplace is perfect, and there will always be ongoing work that needs to be done to be more economical, more social, more environmental, and so on. But just hats off to our police force and the dogs as well.
Thank you. Seeing no further, Councillor Robbins.
Oh, now I'm voting. On what? I did hit the right button. I do want to say something. I just want to say kudos to the citizens of Medicine Hat, through the chair. I did note on the police report that it says that in December, 3 check stops were held. And the report is, while some impaired driving sanctions were issued, overall the majority of the drivers were found to be safe and sober, and that was excellent to see. So kudos to the citizens of Medicine Hat for being responsible in December.
All right, seeing no further questions, we will vote on the motion. Unanimous.
Moving on to new bylaws. Item 11.1, Bylaw 4690, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend Bylaw 2270, the procedure bylaw. And this bylaw can go for all 3 readings tonight with unanimous consent.
Okay, if I may, through the chair, I'm going to take a stab at this. This is the first time I've done this. So it's in relation to Bylaw 4690. I move for leave to introduce bylaw number 2270, the procedure bylaw, to be read for the first time.
Almost there.
Oh.
Bylaw 4690 to amend the procedure bylaw.
Thank you. To amend this procedures bylaw. First time's a failure, but close. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments? We'll vote. It's unanimous.
So to second reading, so I move that bylaw number 2270 of the procedure bylaw be amended as articulated.
Second.
Good enough.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Oh, any questions or comments? We will vote. Oh, it's unanimous.
Okay, so I guess we can, it's unanimous, so off to the third reading. So
We just need to get
motion.
a motion, a motion to have unanimous consent to read it for the third time.
Yeah. Yes, please. I'd like a motion.
I move
Thank you.
to do that.
Now a seconder, please.
Second.
Thank you. Let's vote
Let's vote.
quickly.
It's unanimous.
So I move that the bylaw be read a third time. Bylaw as amended, if applicable and passed, bylaw 2270, the procedures bylaw. I'm sorry.
Councillor Knodel. Okay, so we need a seconder?
Second.
Okay, let's vote. It's unanimous.
Thank you. That's passed. So let's move on to our next bylaw. Item 11.2, Bylaw 4694, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend Bylaw 4492, the Council Code of Conduct bylaw. And with unanimous consent, this bylaw can go for all 3 readings tonight.
I'm going to try again. Okay, so the first reading is I move for leave to introduce bylaw number 4694, or 4492. Oh, I got it wrong. I'm sorry. 46. Oh, I got it wrong up here, that's why.
Yeah, sorry.
4492?
4694.
Fine, yes, 4694.
4492.
Yes, thank you. Boy, oh boy. I move for leave to introduce bylaw number 4492. Have I got that right this time? 4694. The Code of Council, the Council Code of Conduct bylaw be amended. Close enough, please.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
You're doing great.
We will vote then. It's unanimous.
Okay, off to the second reading. I am so frazzled right now, it's funny. So this is in relation to, so I move that bylaw number 4694, the Code of Conduct bylaw, be read a second time.
Okay,
Second.
4694, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend bylaw 4492, the Code of Conduct
you.
bylaw.
Second.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote. It's unanimous. Can I get a motion to vote on this bylaw for the
Moved.
third time?
I move.
Okay. Unanimous consent, okay. Okay, we'll vote on that. Yeah, Cassie did. That's unanimous. And why don't you just read it out and that can be the motion? So moved, you can say.
So bylaw 4694, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend bylaw 4492, the Council Code of Conduct bylaw, to be read a third time and passed.
I'll move that.
Second.
Questions or comments? Okay, we'll vote on that. That's unanimous.
So this third and final bylaw is just for first reading only. 11.3, bylaw 4695, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to close roads in the City of Medicine Hat. This is that portion of road off of Spencer Street that you discussed earlier.
Moved.
Oh. I'll read the first reading for that one. Do you want me to? Oh, sorry. Oh, we're not doing the whole, okay, I second it.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote on, Councillor Canoto?
Real quick, I just wanted to clarify that I said the wrong street name earlier when asking my question to Acting City Manager Pancoast, who I think I've probably called Acting Managing Director earlier as well. So I apologize. And now I know what's going on.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, we will vote. And that's unanimous.
Okay, I've received no notice of motion, so we'll move on to new business. New business, I think Mayor Clark was going to speak to the appointment of acting city manager.
Thank you. We are obviously in the process of looking for a new city manager, and in the interim, we're going to be appointing someone as acting. So currently, Managing Director Pancoast is acting as our city manager, and we're going to extend that to March 8th, 2022, to allow us to make further arrangements. And so I would like to get a motion that it be resolved that Rochelle Pancoast, Managing Director, Strategy Analysis, and, oh, I'm gonna have to look it up.
Strategic management
Strategic
and
management and
analysis.
analysis.
Okay. Division, a City of Medicine Hat is hereby appointed as acting city manager, which appointment is effective March 1st, 2022, and which appointment shall remain in effect until March 8th, 2022.
I move.
Can I say
Oh, yeah.
till the end of the day on March 8th, 2022?
Moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? Let us vote. Oh, Councillor Robbins.
I just wanted to thank Acting City Manager Pancos for being willing to take that on for an additional week.
Okay, seeing no more questions, we'll vote. Oh. It's unanimous.
You've got a couple of people on your list.
Councillor McGrogan? Councillor Knodel?
Just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's come out and is participating in their community. I know there's many of you that come regularly, and I just wanted to say thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the community, and we appreciate you.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. With the indulgence of council, just before we finish here today, I'd like to recognize Kathy Eden, who's over there. She's behind the desk, but she certainly isn't out of sight or out of mind. But Kathy's last meeting is tonight, actually. She's moving on to a new role in the organization, and she's been my right hand and my partner in crime for 10 whole years to ensure the smooth running of council meetings. So she's not going far, but she will be missed. Thank you, Kathy.
Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.